Welcome to Weekly World News on Spring Nectar TV, brought to you by Vibha Ramesh, Los Angeles, United States. First, the top headlines. Biden put Americans' fear at rest over nuclear war. Latest data shows Pfizer less effective in children aged 5 to 11 years. Indians in Ukraine have been moved out safely. Countries join hands in removing some Russian banks from SWIFT. Boris Johnson speaks on the Ukraine situation. Devastating floods in Queensland, a summary. Moving on to news in detail. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has caused a rippling effect on several countries across the globe. In that context, US President Joe Biden affirmed that Americans need not fear the possibility of a nuclear war, as Press Secretary Jen Psaki remarked. We are assessing President Putin's directive, and at this time we soon see no reason to change our own alert levels. Moreover, the US has already set in motion the expelling of 12 members of the Russian mission. According to the Biden administration, the officials abused their privileges of residency in the US by engaging in espionage activities that are adverse to our national security. And in the State of the Union address, Biden confirmed the closure of American airspace to Russian flights, subject to exceptions for diplomatic and humanitarian flights that are rightfully approved. In the words of Jen Psaki, as told to MSNBC, we are not going to have a military war with Russia with US troops, and he thinks it's vitally important and first and foremost important to be direct with the public about that. Meanwhile, recent data from New York state health officials show that the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine has been proven to be relatively less effective in children aged 5 to 11 years. According to the study, which was undertaken during the Omicron surge, the efficacy of the vaccine fell from 100% to 48% in children between 5 and 11 years of age, and from 85% to 73% for children aged 12 to 17. Commenting on the finding, immunologist Florian Kramer said that the difference between the two age groups is striking. This is super interesting because it would almost suggest that it's the dose that makes the difference. The question is how to fix that. And on the abortion law, as anticipated by the Democrats, a bill to secure the right to abortion was rejected on Monday. The Democrats were short by 14 votes. Said Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, abortion is a fundamental right and women's decisions over women's health care belong to women, not to extremist right-wing legislators. Every American deserves to know where their senator stands on an issue as important as the right to choose. Meanwhile, in India, the government is working round the clock to fly out all Indian citizens out of Ukraine in a safe and secure manner. Additionally, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had sent out 4 union ministers to supervise the evacuation process across 4 European countries. And on Tuesday, the Foreign Secretary confirmed that all Indian nationals have been safely evacuated from Ukraine. News as of Thursday has it that India joined hands with 35 other countries in refraining from voting on a Russian resolution. The resolution seeks votes to demand Russia to withdraw all its military forces from Ukraine immediately and unconditionally. To that effect, Indian Ambassador T.S. Trimurthy explained India's decision to abstain from voting as he said, "We remain firm in our convictions that differences can only be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy." Prime Minister Narendra Modi has unequivocally conveyed this in his discussions with world leaders, including of Russia and Ukraine. He underscored the urgent imperative for humanitarian access and movement of stranded civilians. We sincerely hope the second round of talks between India and Ukraine will lead to a positive outcome. Moving on, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has prompted countries to show their displeasure and non-supportive attitude to Russia indirectly. To that effect, prime European countries, United States, Germany and Canada signed an agreement on Saturday to remove some Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system. According to their joint statement, as Russian forces unleash their assault on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities, we are resolved to continue imposing costs on Russia that will further isolate Russia from the international financial system and our economies. We will implement these measures within the coming days. Although the statement did not reveal exactly when SWIFT will execute the removal of the selected banks from its system, the countries confirmed that we commit to ensuring that selected Russian banks are removed from the SWIFT messaging system. This will ensure that these banks are disconnected from the international financial system and harm their ability to operate globally. Second, we commit to imposing restrictive measures that will prevent the Russian central bank from deploying its international reserves in ways that undermine the impact of our sanctions. And the latest news on Ukraine has it that 38 countries have come together in referring claims of atrocities committed in Ukraine. This referral is known to be the largest in the history of ICC. According to ICC rules, a mass referral such as this would mean that the investigation process would be expedited. Over to the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced his support for the removal of select Russian banks from SWIFT. Speaking at the Air Force Base, he remarked, "Let's be in no doubt things are not going all the way of President Putin. Very far from it. The Ukrainians are fighting heroically and in some places with great success, as many of us thought they would, because they're a great country and a very brave country. But as you rightly point out, there are some terrible atrocities being committed and there will be some very grim days ahead for Ukraine. We've got to do everything we can to change the heavy odds that Ukraine faces and to help them. And so that's why we're sending humanitarian supplies, we're sending financial supplies, and military supplies as well," he said. On the other hand, Home Secretary Priti Patel announced that visa rules will not be waived for Ukraine refugees. Her announcement triggered widespread unrest among conservative MPs. In response, she cited the concern over extremists and Russian agents entering the United Kingdom as refugees being the primary reason for the decision. To that effect, she said before the Commons that security and biometric checks are a fundamental part of our visa approval process worldwide and will continue as they did for the evacuation of people from Afghanistan. That is vital to keep British citizens safe and to ensure that we are helping those in genuine need, particularly as Russian troops are now infiltrating Ukraine and merging into Ukrainian forces. And on the trade front, with the intent of promoting bilateral trade between Britain and New Zealand, the two countries signed a trade deal. The deal is set to promote trade by at least 60%, as well as eliminate red tapeism and enable free movement of professionals. While most business leaders welcome the deal, the National Farmers Union believed that such a deal would trigger unfair competition in their sector. Commenting on the deal, Trade Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan said, "Our trade with New Zealand will soar, benefiting businesses and consumers throughout the UK and helping level up the whole country." She also added that tariffs of up to 10% on clothing and footwear, 5% on buses and up to 5% on ships, bulldozers and excavators will be eliminated. And in Vietnam, a tourist boat overturned off the coast, taking with it 13 lives and leaving 4 missing. News has it that the 39 people on board were returning from a popular water sports site and bad weather led the boat to topple. Although rescue operations started promptly, they had to suspend work towards the evening as it was getting difficult to see in the dark. As Chief Nguyen Sin said, "We cannot do anything further as it is too dark. We will resume the search at first light tomorrow morning for the other 4 people." He then added that chances of them being found alive are small. Over to a glimpse on climate control. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made a revelation on Monday that threatens the health of all living things on Earth, as human actions on heating the climate are disrupting the natural world order. Some of the highlights of the report included around 3.3 billion to 3.6 billion people live in areas that are considered highly vulnerable to climate change, mass dying of trees, coral, and species are underway, and several coastal areas across the globe are facing increased temperature spikes of more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Moving on, Queensland in Australia was faced by record-breaking floods that started last Friday and has now accelerated to a flood crisis. Nearly 15,000 homes got flooded and over 54,000 homes lost power in Brisbane. The floods took away the lives of 9 people, even as rescue operations are underway to find those missing. Around 15 evacuation orders were given on Monday alone, even as the Met predicted more rains for until at least Tuesday. And news as of Wednesday had it that around 500,000 people were asked to evacuate their homes in New South Wales. The Emergency Service Minister of New South Wales stated, "We have 500,000 people in our state right now who are either the subject of an evacuation warning or an evacuation." We'll keep you posted on this as it unfolds. With that, we come to this week's Did You Know? Did you know that the best way to optimize your refrigerator's energy consumption is to keep it full? According to popular food and recipe portal The Kitchen, when there's more empty space in the fridge, it tends to displace cold air with warm air every time we open the door. This in turn pushes the refrigeration mechanism to generate more cold air to replace what's lost, thereby consuming more energy. On the other hand, if the appliance is relatively full, lesser cold air escapes, thereby requiring less energy to replace the little lost. If you don't have enough to store in your appliance, no worries. Here's a tip to stock up your fridge. The Kitchen recommends keeping bottles of water to fill the unused space in your refrigerator. Hope that helps. On that note, I come to the end of this week's news report. I'll see you again next Friday with more world news on Spring Nectar TV. Stay safe.